Our last speaker of the session is Rachel Balsley. Rachel is a senior program manager at Stop Waste. She's been at Stop Waste for 24 years and currently oversees the agency's SB 1383 implementation work that supports state compliance for Alameda County jurisdictions. Welcome, Rachel.
That's a hard act to follow, Matt. That was great. So it's entertaining. Hello, I'm glad to be able to share with you today about Stop Waste SB 1383 enforcement program on behalf of Alameda County jurisdictions. Stop Waste is a joint powers authority made up of 14 cities, 2 sanitary districts, and the county, and has a population of 1.6 million. And you're here in Alameda County right now. Let's start, but to give a little context before getting really into the presentation, I just wanted to mention that Alameda County jurisdictions have been providing organics collection service, including food scraps, as part of their hauler agreements for over 10 years, and in some cases, as many as 20 years. We implemented a local ordinance in 2012 mandating recycling and composting service and proper sorting. That previous ordinance helped motivate many accounts to do the right thing, but there were some structural challenges that kept it from full success. Now, jumping into SB 1383, as we were in the planning stages, I'm at the right spot. Stop Waste worked collaboratively with our member agencies to determine the areas of implementation that would be best covered at a county or regional level and which needed to stay with the individual jurisdictions. We took on enforcement of the collection service requirements at commercial and multifamily properties and the edible food recovery requirements. There we go. In the area of collection service, there are close to 27,500 commercial and multifamily accounts in Alameda County. When we began 1383 enforcement in late 2022, we were at a 52% compliance rate. In the last 2.5 years, we've been able to reach a 94% compliance rate countywide, with many of our jurisdictions over 98%. The high rates are a result of shared responsibility with and assistance from our partners, offering multiple pathways to compliance and consistency and frequency of enforcement letters. And we're not the result of any automatic rollouts of service. I want to acknowledge that jurisdiction staff, hauler representatives from multiple service providers, technical assistance contractors, and Stop Waste staff share in this responsibility. And many actually of our partners are here today. It's nice to see you guys in person. So this makes the enforcement we do more effective. The multiple pathways include, of course, traditional curbside collection service, which is about 72% of our total accounts, waivers at about 28% of the commercial accounts, and documented alternative recycling at about 4% of commercial accounts. A little more about alternative compliance pathways. Commercial accounts can apply for a de minimis waiver generation or space constraints. We've only had 2 space constraints waiver though, so obviously the vast majority are de minimis generation. Based on data in our first year of waiver visits, we set certain thresholds based on business type and amount of weekly garbage service, where we could just administratively process some of those waivers, in general, the smaller accounts, and those that we would process with an on-site verification visit. Accounts also have the option to submit documentation on self-haul with receipts, backhaul, shared service, and third-party non-franchise collection if allowed. In both of these pathways, the online forms can be submitted by the account holders themselves or jurisdiction, TA, or hauler staff. We have the functionality on the online forms for a quick translation into multiple languages. And these forms connect directly to our customer relationship management database for easier processing. If I'd known I'd follow all these technology presentations, I probably would have spent more time on our CRM, which is really cool, but don't have time. Make sure. Okay. When we were setting up our enforcement program, we intentionally set fine levels to get closer to a more equitable framework that has higher fines for larger garbage generators, usually larger businesses with more resources. Accounts with 2 or more cubic yards of weekly garbage service have a fine that starts at $100 for lack of service. And those were the accounts that we started our enforcement at, so that the smaller accounts would have more time to come into compliance. Accounts with 2 cubic yards of garbage started a $50 fine. And in line with the 1383 regulations, the fine levels increase with multiple citations. A notice of violation or NOV is issued first to warn them of the potential fine. This is where our approach of consistency and frequency comes in. Citations are issued to those accounts that don't come into compliance approximately every 60 days in increasing fine levels, and we've issued over 8,000 citations for lack of service since 2023. Over 1,500 accounts have received multiple citations. And I also want to mention that we have a third-party contractor that we use to help process our citation payments for easier processing on our end. Okay. I don't have time to go into detail on a lot of this, but I just want to mention that the enforcement is definitely complemented by a lot of free resources and support materials, including free technical assistance, free green bins, labels stickers to label bins, and a sign maker tool, guides, etc. We also know that just having the compost and recycling collection service does not necessarily mean businesses are actually using the service or putting the right materials in the right bins. You can see some of the data here from our most recent waste characterization study. While we have limited ability to affect sorting behavior because we don't directly control any of the franchises, we are beginning to research and analyze best practices for activities or technologies that might improve proper sorting that we would share with our member agencies and hauler staff. So now a little bit more into our monitoring and enforcement of edible food recovery requirements. We felt it was important to work on this countywide because food recovery crosses jurisdictional boundaries. For context, we have close to 1,000 Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators, and we have about 80 different food recovery organizations and services of various sizes in the county. We started conversations with the County Environmental Health Department in 2020, and were able to form a partnership with them for inspections of permitted Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators, which were formalized in MOUs with each of the cities, jurisdictions. My colleague Casey Bartholomew and I serve as liaisons with the County Environmental Health Department staff on behalf of our member agencies, and we meet with them monthly. Stop Waste is the entity that issues the citations for noncompliance, and similar to the downstream requirements, we also set 2 different fine levels for Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators. In our local enforcement ordinance, we included language that if a covered generator did not generate surplus edible food because of food waste prevention practices that they implement, or because they donate any surplus to staff or other direct recipients, that could provide documentation of those activities as an alternative compliance pathway. In the first 2 years of implementation before enforcement began, the county conducted about 175 inspections each year of permitted Tier 1 generators. In 2024, we worked closely with the county to revise their inspection report to also serve as a notice of violation if needed. Last year, the county began enforcement level inspections of Tier 2 sites, and Stop Waste is also inspecting sites that don't hold food permits with the county, primarily those food distributors and wholesale food vendors. And earlier this year, we started the first food recovery citations, which we've issued about 64. Almost done. We have a lot of resources also on food recovery compliance to supplement the enforcement, including a searchable directory of food recovery organizations and services, guides, and donation record keeping templates. All of these are available on our website, as well as copies of our enforcement letters if you'd like to take a look. That's the end of my presentation. I think I'm just on time, 8 seconds to go, and happy to answer questions. Hi, Lindsay.
I'm curious how often you run into a situation where you issue a citation and then the food generator or generator doesn't pay. If that happens, what do you do to mitigate that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, obviously our goal is compliance. It's not citation revenue. So it's not been a huge emphasis of ours, but that's definitely a concern, mostly out of fairness, because there's generators who are paying the fine, and then it's unfair that there are others that are not. Mostly we've been working on the front of just trying to make it clearer on how to pay, making sure it gets to the right people, and changing up our language. We have our envelope have more like enforcement letter enclosed kind of type of stuff. But we haven't instituted any kind of late payment because it's super complicated. So we're still working on ways to sort of explore, increasing our citation payment rate.
Hello, this is Ruben Hernandez with County of Marin. Just wondering if you could elaborate on what's the process between you issue the NOV, between that and the citation? What do you do after you issue that?
Sure, I think I forgot to repeat the last question. So this one's, it sounds like, what's the process between issuing an NOV and a citation? So that's different on the service end. So mostly why we took on the collection service requirement is because that's something that we can do just based on hauler data. Since we don't directly control the hauler data though, it's we get twice a year updates from our various haulers. So we ask on the enforcement letter for folks to submit proof that they've added the service. And then we supplement it with those twice a year updates. So we wait about 60 days. Actually, after the NOV, we wait 75 days. And then we issue the citation if they haven't submitted proof or contacted us to ask for help. They also, quite a bit that submit a request for a waiver, especially if they're smaller, or maybe they're self-hauling some of their materials. So if they are in that process of a waiver, we'll hold back before the citation. But then our CRM actually allows us to review the dates of the last NOVs or citations and basically click a button and it prints out the citation letter. Okay, one more question. Sort of, yeah, let's try it. Okay, the question was, for food recovery enforcement, do you issue it if they're out of compliance with basically multiple issues or just one? So we're concentrating on lack of agreement with a food recovery organization, lack of records, and or not donating the maximum amount. With this first round, we're kind of de-emphasizing the lack of maximum amount because we want to just make sure to get folks educated and into the donation programs. We can issue ones for any one of those 3 violations, though, separately. So we have, in some cases, been starting to issue those for, they have an agreement, but they don't have any records, monthly records, which is one of the main requirements. Hope that answers the question. Great, thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, you have a 10-minute break, so be back here by 3:20. 3:20. Thank you.